standing halt to all things 80s rock because of Kurt Cobain. Pretty much all the people who were in bands in the 80s or, in some way, like, based their cool guy approach, like driving the Camaro off the 80s, they hated how Nirvana was sort of like, just a canal in that stream. Bands of England really seem to pay homage to the 80s more so than anything. Kurt Cobain or Nirvana was like known as the only rock band in England from America, like the only. So that builds contempt on the part of the English, like the Britpops who are trying to, the people who are trying to continue on with the Britpop scene, bands like Pulp and Oasis and Blur. And then, in Seattle, he's building contempt there to like say everything else was sort of run of the mill rock. They weren't really following the new guideline set or the new bar that had been raised. Talk about how everything was like extra, machismo of the 80s. The jock beats up the dork and takes the hot broad back to his Camaro. That's how they kind of define the 80s. So he was like building rivalries on every front. Even the parents, calling them the blood-sucking mosquitoes who drain the youth. Promoting heroin, like so many things in a subtle way. And just kind of like a lovable garage rock style. And he didn't love fame. Yeah, he didn't love fame, so he had the record producers mad at him.
Was that grunge? Grunge rock?
Yeah. Yep. I mean, they called it something else, but yeah, that's what was kind of labeled because of the flannels, the grungy look of the 70s, or what was known as like grunge in the 70s. That kind of played into it, that tied into it. And then on the other end of the spectrum of music of that time, like the two big, one name I saw written down a lot, or I heard mention of, I typically would see it written somewhere, was 9 Inch Nirvana. It sounds kind of sexually related or whatever. The band 9 Inch Nails was the other the contender. England had their own rivalry that America didn't pay a whole lot of attention to. The rivalry between Southern England and Northern England. Oasis and Blur, one was kind of like posh Southern England, London, finesse style and jazz and all that, jazz of character, sort of like a pop rock band. And Oasis was more, dirty fingernails Manchester, just kind of, the two cultural extremes are depicted really well when you see people from Southern England and Northern England in a hostel or a pub in Australia, to where, one's very like Pittsburgh and one's very like Miami suburbs,
I understand what you mean.
And then like, so Nine Inch Nails was kind of carrying on the industrial revolution that was started in the 80s, bands like KMFDM, Skinny Puppy. So they took like a scene that was developing in the 80s and they carried it forward. And that's why 80s artists or people who were in 80s rock metal bands could appreciate Nine Inch Nails more so than something that was a throwback to the 70s almost in some way.
Where's Puddle of Nails or Puddle of Mud fit in?
Post Nirvana. Like sort of an answer to the hip hop rock scene that had developed. There's I saw them in concert. And this is really funny because it was at a fairgrounds and it had just rained, so there's a lot of puddles of mud. It was so fucking weird because I was like having a, sort of a transcendental meditation walking around. Somebody might have got me stoned or something, and I was like looking at raindrops collect while the band was playing, and who was the other band? Fuel was playing. They're always tight, yeah. And this was near Mechanic Street. Check this out. This was near Mechanic Street.
It was Tool?
Not far from Henry Ford Town. And so there was like, of course, oil as there is on most roads, but this is sort of like a compact little northern Midwest town. And there's like, fuel in some of the puddles of mud. I was just, I don't know, I was walking around the fairgrounds area. Huh?
Where are they out of?
Puddle of mud, I'm not sure. Fuel, I'm not sure about them either. But well, yeah, I do remember like people of the '80s seem to support bands like Nine Inch Nails a little bit more so than the new Seattle Revolution that had been created, and like even to this day, it seems like LA hasn't forgot. Like, what is it, K Rock?
K-Rock,
Yeah.
I guess.
K Rock hasn't.
KFRC.
They never really stopped playing that '80s metal, and
K-Rock. Not K-pop, but
and then there was his wife who was like a rival for fame, So it's just like so many tie-ins. He completely dissed out Seattle artists, and he just tried to stand alone in whatever way possible.
Hey, are you going to plug that flip refrigerator in?
Probably was one of the best people to listen to in an interview as well. Yeah, like, I mean, he knew where they stood. He knew where the band stood. Like how, he knew what they were up against. Like the price of fame. Like how he would get his sound kind of retrograded into car commercials, and like how he was just punching in a time clock every time he went on stage. They weren't known for doing the best shows, and it probably had a lot to do with it.
So, get that refrigerator running. Huh?